but know it's time for the show.
Hey, welcome in. Sorry about the delay there. We had some technical difficulties. Probably me. I have no idea what was going on there. StreamYard probably. But welcome into Billsology for October 18th. This is the Bills bye week, but we do have a lot to talk about. Akeem, how do you feel now that we've had a few days to sit on it? And is it just me, or do these two losses feel different than in years past? What's your thoughts?
𝐸𝐮𝐸 Richards built some Buffalo Billsology. If you don't know us by now, ladies and gentlemen, please get to know us. 𝐸𝐻 DM3 Dave Myers. I don't like the feeling that I have in my gut, like right up in here. I don't like the feeling that I have for this Buffalo Bills. I understand that we've lost games in the past, multiple games in the past, 2 games in a row in the past, but this year it just feels a little bit different. It doesn't seem like we good in defending the pass. It doesn't seem like we good in defending the run. And it seems as if Joe Brady has had 2 years of tape out there, and now the rest of the NFL has caught up with the Buffalo Bills offense and made their necessary adjustments. And it looks like we're having trouble adjusting to those adjustments. So I don't feel great. I'm not going to lie to you, headed into this bye week.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the AFC East, obviously, heavily. We're going to talk about, is this team good enough to win a championship? We're going to talk about potential trade targets. We're going to talk about Joe Brady. We're going to talk about Bobby Babich. We're going to talk about the guys coming off of suspension. Josh Allen's play, Keon Coleman, James Cook, bright spots, all kinds of stuff. We're going to fill the show with a lot of how we feel, a lot of our outlook towards what's going to happen the rest of the season. Obviously, there's no game tomorrow, so what would fill up the meat and potatoes of the show would be our previews and predictions. Obviously, that's going to be taken up with just kind of us getting some stuff off of our chest, having open dialogue. And this is the 4th podcast I've done since Monday. So I feel like I've gotten a lot of the stuff out of my system, and I've done a lot of reflecting. I've looked for a lot of silver linings. I've tried to take a positive approach. I've tried to burn the city down. I've tried to do the whole thing. So I think Akeem and me, since we only get to do this on Saturdays, I thought, this would be a good time for Akeem and myself to just kind of let things out and just kind of talk through some stuff. There might be some emotions involved. Last week's show was filled with a lot of emotion. Even Akeem's show, when he was on the show last week, was talking about an uneasy feeling heading into the game against Atlanta. And all Monday we were kind of talking in our Built in Buffalo group chat, and Akeem was just saying he didn't feel comfortable. He didn't feel like this was a team that you could play with and stuff like that. So we're gonna go through all of that. I have notes, but I'm gonna let the show take us where the show takes us, Akeem. But what do you want to talk about first? I gave you a list of topics. I started it off at the top of the show, with the soft open, talking about a few things that we are going to address. Obviously, other things can come and go. Where do you want to start with this team? Where do you want to start with this bye week? Where do you want to start with this roster? What's your thoughts? I'll let you kind of lead the charge, and then we'll kind of layer it out after that.
And there's so much that can be discussed and talk about with this Buffalo Bills unit, with this Buffalo Bills roster, with this team, from the defensive side of the ball to the play calling on both sides of the ball to the regression on offense for the Buffalo Bills. We've been used to scoring 30-plus points a game. Brandon Beane said in the offseason that the offense, I'm not worried about receivers. We score 30-plus points a game. Oh, right. Boy. Let's talk about why possibly the Buffalo Bills regressed over the last 2 games. And I'm gonna throw a name out there, Keon Coleman. Let's start there.
I like it. I had a graphic. I didn't have time because we were having some issues coming on, and I was kind of getting a little nervous about just getting the show ready. But A lot of people are talking about it, and it's not just the local media, it's the national media, and this goes even back to last year. I think Steve Smith said something last year back on ESPN or the NFL Network, and there was a lot of talk about moving Keon Coleman into the slot and have him be a big slot and things like that. Well, we put a graphic out this week about how it's not been successful for not just the Bills offense, but for Josh Allen and Keon Coleman when he's been in the slot and been targeted. The passer rating, I believe it was, it's around 61 or 62, something like that. And that's not good. He seems to be a hot button. Would you agree, Akeem? He seems to be a starting point where people like to start pointing fingers at the second round draft pick. The Bills, he regressed last year, although he looked good for the first, few weeks before he got injured. He needs to have a big season. It was the whole offseason of what if. So to me, I feel like, and I'm not going to compare him to Worthy and Ladd McConkey and all that stuff. I don't want to do that. I feel like that's a disservice. They're in different systems. They do different things. One's a speedster. One's more of a slot guy. That first week had me so hyped for Keon Coleman. It was like almost like a coming out party of like, I told you I can do what you need me to do. I can make plays when called upon, but I feel like Josh is forcing the ball to him some in these 50-50 go routes or these go balls. And I feel like there needs to be a better way to get him involved in the offense. I don't know what that looks like, obviously, but we were sold that Joe Brady was this scheme master and he can scheme guys open. And that's why we weren't worried about having a number one and all this stuff and everybody eats and all that stuff. But to me, I'm disappointed. I'm not going to lie. He seems to have kind of disappeared in the offense the last 4 or 5 games. He's not putting up any numbers. He is being targeted some, but I'm not, he had the fumble, this past week. And then before that, it was like 2-3 targets here and there. So I don't know. I need to see more, I guess. I need to see more, and I want to see more before we label that it was a failed pick. What's your thoughts? Oh, you're muted.
I think that it's tough, right? I believe that Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills staff, they want to seem like the smartest guys in the room. That's what it seems to me. Why do I say that? Keon Coleman, before getting on the Buffalo Bills and being drafted by the Bills, all his metrics said exactly what's going on with his struggles today. He wasn't he doesn't have the great speed. He doesn't have the footwork necessary to separate consistently on the outside. This was on the scouting report before he got drafted to the Buffalo Bills. In order for Keon Coleman to have success, you would want to put him in the slot. You'll want him to be a big slot guy so he can have open releases and free releases in between the inside or outside release, so he can get more room to operate, because he doesn't have the metrics shown before the pick for the Buffalo Bills that he can consistently win on the outside. And it's now proven to be the case so far for the Buffalo Bills and Keon Coleman. So am I disappointed? Yes, I'm disappointed. But at the same time, we knew the type of player he was before he got to the Buffalo Bills. And it seems to me as if Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and that Bill staff is saying, you know what? We're smarter than you. And I understand that the scouting report says that he should be in the slot more, but we're going to stick him right here on the outside because we believe in our system, in our building, he would develop to the point where he can consistently win on the outside. And so far, that has not happened. That is not the case. Only 10% of his offensive snaps are in the slot wide receiver position. And I think that has to be an uptick. There's a multitude of things, in my opinion, the Buffalo Bills can absolutely do to help Keon Coleman along the way. And instead of just leaving him out there on an island and say, you know what? Go ahead, you win your one-on-one, go and beat your guy every time. We have coaching staffs for a reason, right? Sometimes it's up to the coach to devise ways to get their players open. And even though I'm disappointed in Keon Coleman's progression or lack thereof thus far. I'm also disappointed in the usage and the way he's being used within the offense. And we have to look at Joe Brady as the culprit for that.
You want to know what his number one bullet point on his scouting report coming out of college was? He's not sudden and doesn't have great speed, so beating press and creating breathing room against tight man coverage will depend on his ability to improve his route running. Is that not what we've seen for almost 2 seasons? He can't win one-on-ones. Like you said, they have to figure out if he's not going to win, then that's what I said. If he can't win his one-on-ones, Brady's got to figure out, like you said, putting him in the slot. And I don't think that that's worked either. Now it's a smaller sample size, but I don't know. This all leads me to looking at the Amari Cooper trade. I did a lot of digging into the Amari Cooper trade in the past 4 days, because a lot of people, and myself included, said that when they traded for Amari Cooper, it didn't do a whole heck of a lot. But if you look at what it did for the other players, the Bills scored more points. The EPA all over the board was better. The Bills were better because of the coverage that was warranted by Amari Cooper. That's why I think a lot of Bills fans are clamoring for Brandon Beane to go get a receiver, a guy that warrants coverage, a guy that other teams' defenses have to pay attention to. Do you think right now that opposing defenses, so the next game for the Bills will be the Carolina Panthers a week from Sunday. Do you think that their defensive coordinator is scouting to defend Keon Coleman of all the Bills skill position players, or is there other guys? There's other guys first, right? You got Kincaid and Cook. Obviously, we won't talk about Josh, but then you got Shakir and things like that. That's the issue. Like, you don't have to be concerned with where Keon is. Just put a guy on him, and he's not going to win the route. And you and me have gone back and forth saying that that's not who he is. And okay, that's fine. If you want to use that as an excuse for him, that's fine. But we're not seeing the other stuff, right? We're not seeing the contested catches. And now I saw a comment about ball placement. That's fine. But there's been some stuff that looked good and it was not executed on his end. So, I don't know. I mean, if they're asking him to do things that he's not accustomed to doing, maybe that's on Joe Brady. If they're asking him to do things that he is accustomed to and he's not executing, then that's on him. So, I don't know. I don't want to give up on him because I like the kid. I think having him as a second-round draft pick and as young as he is, I do feel like we need to give him some time. But we went through last year with what happened with the injury. Came back, was non-existent through the end of the season and the postseason. This year, he starts off with a bang, and now it's like we're not doing that anymore. I don't know if it's scheme, if it's him. We're going to have to wait and see, right? I mean, we're going to have to let this play out, right? Any other thoughts?
It's a combination of things. I think the coach, obviously Keon Coleman has to step up. He has to, he has to win his matchup. But at the same time, I think the coaching staff can do a better job in creating space, not only for Keon Coleman, but for the rest of the wide receivers in that position group. What happened to motion? Right, I haven't seen a ton of motion from Joe Brady and this offense. You can use different formations. You could use stack and bunch formations that would keep DBs from being able to get a clean jam on receivers. You can leverage the motion. You could use jet and orange motion to identify man or zone, and you can run him into the leverage. I think there is a number of things you can possibly do pre-snap to, first of all, understand what the defense is trying to disguise and trying to do, and just to free up space for your receivers. Give them an option for inside or outside release. Give them an option to get a free release because they are going in motion. Just give some guys some advantages just to open up their route running and the passing lanes for the quarterback and the receiver. And I'm not seeing enough of that. So I do think that Keon Coleman has to step up, and obviously it's on the player because the players are the ones on the field, but the coaching staff, the coach, the play caller, he has to help his players with the scheme. And when Sean McDermott says everything looks too hard, looks too difficult, that's an indictment on Joe Brady. And he has to do a better job scheming not only Keon Coleman, but the rest of receivers for the Buffalo Bills open.
Yeah, and Sean McDermott said too, he's like, Josh is taking too many hits. We can't be doing things that are putting him in harm's way. And that goes back to, Connor McGovern a couple of weeks ago he was doing this Buffalo under the helmet thing that our guy Lance, shout out to President Lance, has been involved with. And he was interviewed and he said he thinks that a lot of the offensive play calling has just been very vanilla. Because like you said, last year, everybody in the media was raving about the motion and the confusing aspects of what Josh Allen and the Bills offense was doing by putting Cook here, put Cook there, send this guy in motion, send that guy in motion, using an extra offensive lineman, things like that. We talked about having Jackson Hawes and how much playing time is he going to get and things like that. I feel like not just the offense, but I feel like Joe Brady's regressed. And I don't want to hear people saying that this offense is just showing vanilla, like they're not showing all their cards. What does that mean? You got to play to win games. And
I don't buy that.
I don't either. I will push back hard on a lot of, I've seen it on a lot of podcasts this week. A lot of Bills content creators are talking about it. And I'm not saying that that's somewhat of an excuse, but I will push back on that 100 times out of 100, because the AFC East, especially after the first few weeks when we saw how the standings were, you got to come to win every game. And we had a show called Stacking Wins. And that's what this team should have been doing. So I don't want to hear that all of a sudden they're not going to show anybody their hands in week 5 and week 6. The play calling's just been bad. Let's call a spade to take a quote from you. On Monday night, when the Bills scored on those 2 drives, what did they do? It was balance. There was run and pass. Now, yes, on that first drive, they had that really nice big pass to Joshua Palmer, which I wish we could see more of. But on the second scoring drive for the Bills, which was their first drive of the third quarter, and I made a video about this, James Cook had 5 carries for 37 yards, and they scored. And he was making it look easy. He was getting 7, 8, 5, 9, 12 at a clip. And then in the fourth quarter, he had 1 carry for 4 yards. So the Bills had plenty of opportunities to score points Monday night. It was 21-14, and the Bills had the ball 3 different times with a chance to tie the game. And they were passing on all those drives. 3 and out, punt. Like I don't understand when it's 3rd and 1, and I'm sure this has been beat to death in the media, but when it's 3rd and 1 and you have Josh Allen and you have James Cook, who to me are the best 2 players offensively, obviously Josh and then Cook, why aren't you just push it twice, hand it to Cook twice, do one of each, whatever you want, you should be able to get a yard. Why does it feel like everything is so difficult at times, but then there's other times when it looks like, why haven't we been doing this the whole game? Do you have an explanation for why that could be? Is Joe Brady just having complete meltdowns in the middle of games when it's crunch time? Like, I don't get it. What's your take? And then we can kind of keep going on Joe Brady and James Cook and stuff like that. Oh, you're muted.
I've been doing that a lot. I think it's just the predictability of the offense right now with Joe Brady. There's no reason why 2 weeks ago we failed on a jet sweep to the tight end. It's no reason why you are doing the same exact play that failed, the same exact play that Sean McDermott probably talked to you about, and ran it in another crucial situation. The only difference is with Elijah Moore instead of the tight end, and it failed. Joe Brady has been running that play every game, twice a game, since the beginning of the season. We've had success with that play in the first and second games of the season. How many times are you going to put that same play on display to these high-powered defenses and these smart offensive coordinators? Once you see something once or twice, people are going to start to get hip to it. So when I see that, I think it's a red flag. I'm thinking now I'm starting to question your acumen as an offensive coordinator, because it's not even spread out where you did this in week 8 and it failed and you went back to week 13. You did it the very next week.
Let me ask you this. Hold on. Let me ask you this. So what did the Falcons do most of that game, especially on 3rd down? the Falcons defense. They
They
blitzed,
went.
right?
They blitzed. They blitzed. It was reminiscent of Kansas City in the playoff game last year.
On that play, they blitzed. And you're not going to beat a blitz with a jet sweep. You're not, because there's more defenders than there are guys to block. So that's why I don't understand. On third down, just run the ball twice. If you don't get it, they're better than you. Okay.
Now let me ask you a question. Now, is it all Joe Brady's fault? Right? Because you just said, what did the Falcons do a lot against the Buffalo Bills? And I just said, reminiscent of Kansas City playoffs last year, they blitzed a ton, right? Who's at fault here? Is it Joe Brady not giving that hot route, preparing for the blitz? Is it Josh Allen not recognizing that the blitz is coming and not recognizing the hot route pre-snap to go to in case of the blitz? Like, who is it a combination of both? Like, who's at fault here? Because it seems as if the Atlanta Falcons was consistently blitzing, consistently getting pressure, and consistently having success without any adjustments from our offense. Is that Joe Brady or Josh Allen there?
I think it's both, but like, we can't take any blame from Josh on this. Like, I know a lot of people are kind of scared to say anything negative about Josh Allen, but like, the last two games, the blueprint's out. Blitz, Josh Allen, and no one's going to get open. Number one. Number two, he might not recognize it pre-snap. And he wasn't doing that last year. He picked that stuff up last year. That's why he only was sacked 14 times. He's been sacked 12 times in 6 games. So I think there's dual faults, if you want to say, but there needs to be better execution all around on anything. If it's a play call and Josh Allen doesn't agree with the play call, and then he goes and he sees what's being presented to him by the defense, he needs to understand that I need to check out of this play. I need to figure it out. If the play call was a jet sweep and it was 3rd and 1, and he saw what was in front of him and he didn't recognize that play was going to get blown up, then we have a larger issue.
That's
right?
on him. That's on him.
Yeah, we have a larger issue here, because I feel like there's trust that if I get blitzed, I'm going to be able to do what I do and get it to somebody because I have playmakers, right? So maybe confidence level has been taking a hit ever since the Patriots game, because the Patriots did the same thing. They said, we're just going to drop all these guys in coverage. They can't separate. You're going to have to figure it out. And Josh couldn't figure it out. So now on the flip side of this, the Falcons blitzed heavily all game, and the Bills couldn't figure that out either. First off, they couldn't pick up the protection. Second of all, Josh couldn't figure out how to get the ball out fast enough. And third of all, we don't have the horses to do that, right? We don't have the receivers that are going to be, if Josh is blitzed, like, I'm the hot route, or I'm the second go, or whatever it is. And then you can go back to play calling, because if you're being blitzed consistently throughout the game, you need to adjust your play calling. You know what was beating the blitz? Running the goddamn football. It beat the blitz on that 3rd quarter drive when the Bills scored. They could not stop James Cook. And then the Bills James Cook, last time he was on the field was with 11 minutes and 45 seconds left in the 4th quarter. That is coaching malpractice. I'm sorry. I've been saying it all week, and I'll continue to say it. I don't care if you don't want to run the ball. Get James Cook involved in the passing game. He's your second best offensive player. And it baffles me. So I think there's a lot, and I think this is a good week for them to have the bye, coming off being punched in the mouth 2 weeks in a row. And now you can go watch film of all these games, find out what the hell is going on. Joe Brady needs to bring it, like the play calling against the Panthers, because if you play your C game against the Panthers, they're going to beat you. You could talk all the shit you want about the Panthers, but if you play your C game, they're going to beat you. They beat the Falcons 30-0. They figured that defense out. That defense has not just all of a sudden learned how to blitz. They've been doing it all year. So I don't know. What's your take? Is it Josh? Is it scheme? Is it the receivers? What is it?
Man, I think it's everybody right now. Everybody gets to blame. Everybody gets to blame. Obviously I love Josh. He has to get blame here. If I'm going to be honest, again, he has to get blamed. But if guys aren't getting open, You start the press. If guys aren't getting open, you want to make things happen. You're trying to make things happen. You're trying to win the game. You start pressing. And then when you start pressing, you start forcing things. How much now? Understand we have to blame Josh where we need to blame Josh, but how much of that is because of the lack of separation it is from the receivers? And now because of that, it's starting to become a consistent thing now that, okay, my receivers, just like a quarterback when he doesn't have an offensive line, right? He has a lot of time for this particular play, but he gets rid of the ball a little quick because he's been so used to getting sacked because he doesn't have an offensive line, right? Kind of like a CJ Stroud out there in Houston. But now with Josh Allen, when your offensive skill weapons are consistently not getting open and you're in a ball game where you have to make plays, you have to make something happen, I think we're starting to see a little bit of Josh Allen reverting back to as if he had Ken Dorsey as an offensive coordinator. He kind of lost his way when Ken Dorsey, right before Ken Dorsey got fired, then implement Joe Brady. And you could even hear Josh Allen during the game said, "I'm back."
Yeah.
Right. Because he had a new play caller calling plays, and it was different for the opposition and guys was getting open. Right. But now I feel like it's a little bit back to Josh Allen a couple years ago with Ken Dorsey and the receivers not getting open, and now he has to press. Of course, we're going to blame the player because that's who we see. But how much of that is schematics and the lack of consistently getting open from his offensive skill positions, and is forcing him to try to be Superman and make the plays that aren't there, but he has to try to make it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I see a bunch of comments in there about Josh might be playing injured. I know for a fact if you watch the Falcons game, he got
not an excuse. Yeah, but it's not we can't keep keep using excuses. Not you.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm saying because I was just about to say I was going to kind of piggyback off of what you said. Josh looks like 2023 Josh early in the season when he was forcing everything because the opposing defense would take Diggs away and then there was nothing else. And Ken Dorsey's offense was pass, occasionally give it to Cook, pass. And Josh was forcing things because he had to make plays. He had to get the ball to somebody somehow, some way. And that's the year he had 19 interceptions. And you look at last year, and see that he had so few. I think he had 6 interceptions last year. And it was because Joe Brady made things easy for him. Now, yes, there was a balanced attack with James Cook, but James Cook, he barely had 1,000 yards. So there was times the Lions game, the Rams game, same receivers basically, where Josh had to throw the ball all over the field. The Ravens game this year, he had to throw the ball over the field. It's about putting the receivers in the routes that they're capable of running. And that's what I said earlier this week. I said, are we asking receivers that we have on this roster to do things that they can't do? Like in practice all week, we should be figuring out what the best routes are for the guys that we have. Now, I'm not using injuries as an excuse, but I know Palmer went out early. We didn't have Kincaid, blah, blah, blah. But are we asking certain guys to run the routes that they're not supposed to be running? Like Palmer should be doing X, Shakir should be doing Y, and this, that, and the third. Coleman's doing this, and Kincaid's doing that. I think this is a bigger indictment on Joe Brady, honestly, because why I started the show by asking you if it feels different with the Bills losing 2 games as they have every year under Sean McDermott, why this feels different than, say, last year or the year before, because it's looked really unstructured minus the Ravens game. Yes, they won games, but the offense was not balanced like it was last year. And it's slowly, you could start to see, I don't want to say the wheels were coming off, but you could start to see that things just were disjointed. Like it felt like things were hard to just do the easy things. There'd be times when the Bills would come out either to start the game right down the field, score a touchdown. The next 3 drives, they just look like shit. Undisciplined penalties. The line couldn't block. There was nobody open. Josh throwing weird passes, whatever. And then they'd come out in the third quarter and right down the field and score. And we're like, okay, we're good. They made adjustments. And then the rest of the game, everything was a struggle. Like, I feel like there hasn't been 4 quarters offensively of good football. And we couldn't say that last year. There was a lot of games last year when it was like they were on somebody's throat from the word go. The 49ers game, like that game, the Bills offense, say what you want about the defense. The offense was able to score when they needed to, when they wanted to. Same with the Lions, same with the Rams. Like it doesn't seem that way this year. Am I crazy? Like to think it just everything seems difficult and it's progressively gotten worse. They beat the Saints by 12. It doesn't seem like they beat the Saints by 12. They beat the Dolphins by 10. It really doesn't seem like they beat the Dolphins by 10. And then they scored 20 and then they scored 14. So I don't know. What's your thoughts?
It's and again, and I said this in our group chat, and I'm hope I'm wrong. And our Buffalo Bills, we love our Buffalo Bills. We're not trying to come up here, Billsology today, and just be the negative Nancy's, right? And just talk about everything bad for the Buffalo Bills. But we just gotta call a spade, right? Yeah. And in my guts, I'm a New York Mets fan.
Oh boy.
Okay. The New York Mets in June was 22 games above 500, had the best record in the Major League Baseball, and they ended up not making the playoffs, right? The vibe that the Buffalo Bills give me is the same vibe the New York Mets gave me as I watched them sink throughout the rest of the season. I hope that I'm wrong, right? But again, we will see what happens. We hope that we can rectify the ship and we can steer the ship the right way and hopefully make the playoffs and continue our journey in our quest to win the Super Bowl. But DM3, I gotta ask you, right? I had some notes.
Wait, hold on. I want to ask you real quick. Just
of course.
I hate using this term, but vibes. Like we've seen, especially with Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, guys like that. They're very animated, right? When things are going well, obviously everybody's going to be happy. Winning is a deodorant for everything, right? But the last 3 weeks, and I'll include the Saints game in there, the vibes of the team. I don't want to say aura, but it just feels like they look disinterested. Am I crazy to think like when you see them now? I understand losing sucks, right? Josh Allen is ultra competitive, and so are most of the guys on that roster, if not all of them. But like they're running the offense, they just look dejected. Like he doesn't look like he's enjoying what they're doing. Does that make sense? And then I don't see anybody defensively, and we've talked about this before. I don't see anybody defensively that is giving them a kick in the ass. And I've said this for a long time. Like we need some freaking dudes on this team that are gonna be that. Let's go. We need to get this shit straight. We need to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and go. They just look dejected, disinterested. The Patriots game halfway through, they just look like they could give two shits against the Falcons after the first drive. They just look like defeated. They just look like shit. Is that just me?
No, it's not just you. And let me tell you,
confidence is a huge thing in the NFL.
Huge. Absolutely. And why the vibe's different, right? In the past, now the Buffalo Bills have lost 2 straight since Sean McDermott's been tenured with the Buffalo Bills. We know that whatever stats has been out there. But some reasons why it feels different, right? Even in next week's game against the Carolina Panthers, in the past, the vibe and the feeling is we're going to beat the Panthers. There's no way. Home, away, neutral, we're beating the Panthers, right? This year is like, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to beat the Panthers.
Yeah, I just 2 weeks, right?
I just seen the Bills lose to the Falcons. I seen the same Carolina Panthers beat the Falcons 30-0. I just seen Rico Dowdle run for 200 yards back-to-back weeks, which is the exact weakness for the Buffalo Bills. The vibes, even in games that you're supposed to win, do not feel the same for this year's 2025 Buffalo Bills. And that is concerning. And hopefully we can win through the negative vibes, but I just don't know. Until we see it, is a lot of uncertainty there. But DM3,
Yeah.
I want to ask you. I know we've been talking about 𝐾𝐿 Coleman. We've been talking about the offense. We've been talking about Joe Brady. Appreciate everybody for tuning in thus far. This is Billsology, DM3, 𝐸_RICH. We have a lot of problems, a lot of issues beyond, right? Beyond the wide receiver position. We've been talking about the wide receivers. We've been talking about the cornerbacks, the safeties, the D line. How do you feel about the Buffalo Bills roster?
How far do we want to go down this rabbit hole? Do we want to talk about the drafts for the last 4 or 5 years? Do we want to talk about free agent spending? Do we want to talk about the extensions that we just gave out that I feel like we're not seeing anything now? Sure, 6 games. Let's give it a chance. I don't think this roster is good enough to win a Super Bowl. I understand we have a unicorn in Josh Allen. I understand that we have a top 5/3 running back in James Cook. We are supposed to have a really good offensive line. If you look at some of the metrics, they're still doing fairly well as far as overall through 6 games, even though the last 2 games has not been great. I don't know. I don't think this is anything that can be fixed at the trade deadline. I don't think this is anything that I don't know. I'm trying to have a silver lining here because there is reinforcements coming, right? Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi are coming. Larry Ogunjobi is going to make a difference. A lot of people aren't even considering him. They're talking all about Michael Hoyt. I feel like Larry Ogunjobi, when he played in a 4-3 defense, was really, really good. And he's coming. I think that they're believing that Max Hairston's going to be ready, and maybe he's a spark. And I understand we don't want to live on maybes. You can have maybes in one hand and shit in the other hand and see which one fills up first. But, I feel like, maybe Cole Bishop gets more reps. Maybe Jordan Poyer, maybe he's just better than Taylor Rapp. And he's not great, but he's better than Taylor Rapp. And, maybe Matt Milano comes back, cross my fingers, and maybe Joe Brady turns things around. But it's a lot of maybes. So I don't know. And I know you're blurry and you're trying to figure that out. Our technology today has been on point. By the way.
Right. That part. I'm like, what the hell's going on?
I don't want someone to watch our show and just think that we're just trying to be negative and just think that we're just picking out all the warts and we're not talking about some positives and things that could be good and stuff like that. At this point, if you look at this roster, and now granted, I'll say this.
Keep talking, DM3. Go ahead. Keep talking.
I'll say all this by putting out there that the AFC this year is wide open. The AFC this year is probably the most winnable that it's been. Now, the Bills have had a few hiccups, but I feel like if this was the year for you're good now. I feel like it's week 6 and I still feel like the AFC is wide open. I still feel like I don't know who the best team in the NFL is. I really don't. People are crowning the Kansas City Chiefs because they beat the Detroit Lions after scoring 30 points, having no penalties called, and all the controversies from that game. Fine, whatever. But I don't know. I mean, name rosters that we could compare to see if the Bills roster is better than, because again, I don't know how good the Colts are. I don't know how good the Steelers are. They're 4-2. I don't know how good the Eagles are. The Chiefs are 3-3. I still think that they have a bunch of issues. So I don't know. What's your thoughts overall on the roster?
I have concerns with the roster. I have concerns with the safety position. I have concerns with the cornerback position. I have concerns in the run game for the Buffalo Bills. In my opinion, for the Buffalo Bills not to have any money and to have the weaknesses, the weaknesses we have with no money, we have to look at Brandon Beane at some point and say, hey, bro, the draft hasn't been looking the greatest. The free agency hasn't been looking the best. What are we doing? What are we doing to continue to compete in terms of trying to hoist that Lombardi trophy? Josh Allen's 29 years old, 30 years old soon. He's not going to be around forever. We have to assemble a team where we can't just have guys that to be average guys and good character guys and fit the program to think that that's going to be good enough to hoist Lombardi trophy. We're going to have to do things different. We're going to have to get some dogs in here. We may have to get some guys that are dogs and good players, but don't necessarily fit the culture personality wise, but we got to do things in order to win. You know, Kobe and Shaq didn't get along, but they won championships, right? We see for the Philadelphia Eagles last year, they have some issues there, but they won championships, right? So we have to get the proper people in here to execute our plays and to play at a high level style to hoist this Lombardi trophy. And right now, it don't even seem as if we have the players to compete for that Lombardi trophy right now, because it seems like we just have problems in a multitude of areas. So that's the concern for me. And we have to look at Brandon Beane at some point and say, hey, we knew Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde wasn't going to be here forever. We could have been a little bit more proactive at the safety position and get guys in here before Jordan Poyer and or Micah Hyde was ready to go, so they can get an understanding how to be a pro, so they can see how Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde man the safety position. We could have got guys in here and been a little proactive instead of being reactive to wait to see guys actually lose a step to want to get guys to come in now. And these guys that's coming in, you're taking a risk, right? Because these new guys, we don't know if they can mirror or fill the shoes of the guys prior. And that's the main problem that we have. Not only can't these guys fill the shoes, they are becoming liabilities. And that is an issue, especially for a Sean McDermott defense that is, you know, that needs good safety play.
And what's kind of what you touched on about, like, when you started that whole talk about Brandon Beane in the roster, like, it's money. It's so frustrating to understand. And next year's not any better, by the way. If anybody wants to look at the 2026 salary cap, I understand it's going to go up by like 30 million. It always does. But it's frustrating where the Bills are at right now. And then all the positive, Brandon Beane's made a trade almost every year at the deadline. He's going to make another one or before the deadline. He reacted last year to not having a wide receiver. He reacted the year that Trey got injured, so he went out and got Rasul Douglas. The point is, the Bills have $2 million, depending on whatever source you look at for salary cap, if it's over the cap or if it's spot track. The Bills don't have any money, and that's the frustrating part, because you have to hit on, I'd say, 40 to 50% of your picks got to be hits. They got to be contributing to this roster. And if you look at the last two drafts, the one that's contributing the most is a fourth-round pick in Deion Walker. He's a fourth-round pick. Now, I can't blame TJ Sanders for getting injured, and I can't blame Keon Coleman for getting injured last year, and Dwayne Carter got injured this year. We don't know what he would have been, but you got to hit on these picks. And I don't want to hear all these people constantly throwing at me, well, look at what he does on day 3. I don't care. If you're not going to trade day 1 or 2 picks for a proven player that you could put on your roster during the season or in the offseason, and then you use said picks for players who we're still waiting on, then yeah, okay, cool. Your day 3 picks worked out. But I just...
That's not good enough. That's not good enough.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to compare him to Howie Roseman, because Howie Roseman is the gold standard in the NFL as far as general managers. And he's lost players, replaced them with draft picks. He's signed big contracts. He's signed receivers, not 1, but 2. He's paid his quarterback. He's paid players on defense, and they just won the Super Bowl. I don't care if they're having trouble at 4-2. I would love to have that kind of trouble at 4-2 after coming off of winning the
2 Super Bowls. Yeah, absolutely.
Being in 2 in 3 years. And they won one a few years back before that. The point is Brandon Beane has to be held to accountable. He has to be held to the fire for a lot of this. Now, if you want to dig into this even more and talk about, okay, well, maybe Brandon Beane is drafting good, valuable players, but they're not being put in positions to be successful, then you can dig into the coaching aspect of Bobby Babich and Joe Brady and Sean McDermott and all those other guys. But I think it starts with Brandon Beane. He's gave out all these contract extensions. Now I understand next year we don't have money against the cap, but we don't need to do a lot of things because in theory we have all these core guys that are signed to extensions. But then if this team underperforms this year, we're going to look at these contract extensions and say, how soon until we can get out of Greg Rousseau's contract? Did we overpay Christian Benford? Because after 6 games, it looks like he's regressed. Khalil Shakir and James Cook, I'm okay with that money. That's okay. Terrell Bernard, like, got to start seeing more from him. So I don't know.
And not only that, right? When we talk about Brandon Beane hitting on late round picks, that's good and that's cool if you're hitting on other picks as well.
Right.
If you're constantly hitting on late round picks, but you're not hitting on your early round picks, it's going to start to show after a couple of years. And as a couple of years has passed, and now this year, in my opinion, is starting to show. Hitting on late round picks is great, but these late round picks, the ceiling for late round picks is not as high as the ceilings for the first and second round picks if they reach their full potential, right? It's about the ceiling. Now, hitting on late round picks, 9 times out of 10, these late round picks are not going to turn into Max Crosby's, right? These late round picks being good are going to, if they hits, going to end up being good players, but their ceiling is going to be, it's not going to be as high as a first round pick. So at some point, you're going to have to hit on those later round picks as well. And at some point, yes, the Buffalo Bills, they do not have the money as other teams around the National Football League, but with the money that you do have, you have to hit on the players that you sign. Right? You can't not hit on players that you sign, and you're not drafting well. That's going to be a problem. Josh Palmer, Buffalo Bills, they say they didn't have money. Josh Palmer got a 3-year deal, $36 million. That's $12 million. That's $12 million per. And a lot of other players, they got their contracts as well. You mean to tell me that through better decision makings, the Buffalo Bills couldn't get better players, even if it was less players? I would rather 1 or 2 or 3 impact players than 5 or 6 players that gets great deals, but they're not performing like they need to perform to host Lombardi trophies, right? So at some point, we absolutely right and absolutely have to hold Brandon Beane accountable for not only the draft picks, but the decisions he make in free agency as well, because I don't see a lot of guys that are impactful players in free agency and in the draft. So that's a problem.
And I think kind of to just piggyback off of what you said about the draft, we always talk about the Bills draft and think that the guys that they draft on day 3, like late 6th, 7th round, those guys aren't making the roster anyways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a guy like Christian Benford, who's a 6th round pick, beat out your your 1st round pick,
it's a problem.
It's an issue. And I understand I'm not going to beat the 𝐬𝐿 horse to death here, but like, how many wide receivers on the Bills roster are better than Keon Coleman? Honest question. Like, and he's a 2nd round pick. Now I understand, like, he's a player that we have to develop. I get that, but like, how many times, like Dwayne Carter, 3rd round pick? He's injured, but I don't feel like he would have been a huge contributing factor to this defense this year. Like, things like that are just, it's frustrating that we have Deion Walker, who's one of the bright spots out of what's happened the last few weeks. It is a 4th round pick who's playing a hell of a lot more than Landon Jackson is. Now, I can't knock TJ Sanders and Maxwell Harrison. They're injured, but what are we even talking about? So I don't want to keep, beating a dead horse here, because I think in the offseason, a lot of people were bringing up the whole wide receiver thing, and then a lot of people jumped on them to defend Brandon Beane. But here we are again. I'll bet any money that Brandon Beane is going to trade for a wide receiver. What's your thoughts? He's not going to trade for a safety, and he's not going to trade for a corner. I'll get your thoughts first, and then I'll tell you why I think he's not going to trade for a corner or a safety.
I think the Buffalo Bills have multiple problems. I hope the Buffalo Bills trade for a wide receiver and or corner or safety. I'm hoping we can make at least 2 trades this cycle for the trade deadline. Now, will it happen? Who knows? Sean McDermott, in my opinion, we'll get into that. Let me hear why you don't think Brandon Beane was going to make a trade for safety or cornerback.
If you look at the history of Sean McDermott in his safety room, it's guys he trusts in his system, right? Now, yes, they did draft Cole Bishop, but he was highly scouted. I think they met with him 3 times. He seemed to be an athletic, physical specimen, a guy that they could bring in, and a guy that I feel like they were going to not start right away anyways. They brought Damar Hamlin back last year, and they started Damar Hamlin. So he had Poyer and Hyde, who he trusted extensively. We all know that for good reason. Those guys performed. They carried the back half of the defense for 5-6 plus years. He has Taylor Rapp, who he trusts. He's been here 3 years. He has Damar Hamlin, who he trusts. He's been here, 4 years, 5 years now. I just don't. He's got Cam Lewis if he needs him. I just don't think that he's going to go to Brandon Beane and Brandon Beane's going to go to him. They're going to have a conversation about a safety from X team that's really good, and he's going to come here, and Sean McDermott's going to trust him right away to play in his system. I just don't. And then, therefore, I think Brandon Beane's just not going to try to go and spend draft capital or players because of the salary cap to acquire a safety. Now, with the corner, does that make any sense? Like, I know I sound crazy, but I feel like Sean McDermott with the safety position is the biggest part of his defense. And I feel like he wants to prove that he can make Taylor Rapp or another safety, Jordan Poyer, because he trusts Jordan Poyer, and Cole Bishop, whatever combination work. I feel like that's what he wants, because he's stubborn and he feels like it's going to work. And I don't think Brandon Beane is going to ask Sean McDermott, if he's kind of on the fence about adding somebody, that Brandon Beane's just going to go spend the draft capital or the money to go do it. I just don't. And then corner, and then you asked me about corner, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
no, you good. No, you good. Go ahead.
I think that they're banking a lot on Maxwell Hairston coming back. And I think it's, even if they're unsure about how he's going to perform, I feel like they really want that to work. And Sean McDermott openly said that they are hopeful, and Sean McDermott doesn't say anything unless it's something positive. So if he would have just said, we're not going to speak on that, I have no new information or whatever, but he said, I'm hopeful. In Sean McDermott speak, that's Maxwell Hairston's coming back soon. I don't know if it's this week, next week, but it's soon. And I feel like they think that he's going to be able to get on the field. That's just my, I don't know how to explain it. That's just my gut feeling. But I do feel like the wide receiver position, Brandon Beane, and I want to say this to you, okay? So we all heard the clips from back in the spring when Beane was on WGR and he let loose on those guys about, we scored 30 points last year. Offense wasn't the problem. It was defense. He was not talking about the roster construction. He was talking about the draft. If you go back and you take an approach of, they interviewed him like a day or two after the draft, I think. So his philosophy for the draft was, I'm going defense heavy on the draft. Unless something falls out of the sky when we pick that's not expected to be there as far as a wide receiver, I'm going defensively. That's where we improved on the defense. Because he spent money on a wide receiver in free agency. He spent more money on a wide receiver than he did on any other position. Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi, he spent more money on a wide receiver. I feel like he's going to make a trade for a wide receiver. Who that is, I have no idea. What's your thoughts?
I think he's going to make a trade for a wide receiver as well. At the same time, I hope he does more. I hope he addresses. I agree with you with the cornerback position. I think they're going to ride out that position. Maxwell Hairston. Hopefully, Dorian Strong can come back. I think they're going to ride out that position as long as those two players can come back. But as far as the safety position, man, if we're talking about a position being an integral part to a defense, the philosophy for the Buffalo Bills, we want to have good safety play. Now, I don't know, their thought process, obviously, on how confident or lack thereof they feel in the position. But seeing the position, I know we have issues. When I look at Taylor Rapp, and I think I've been saying this since Cole Bishop got drafted. When I look up Taylor Rapp and I look up Cole Bishop, they are similar players in terms of where they play their best at. They're both, in my opinion, redundant players. They're both, in my opinion, box safeties. So now when you're asking one player to play that free safety position, or you're asking one player to play that middle of the field position, you're taking away from what those players do best. And what both those players do best, in my opinion, is be downhill box safeties. And now you're taking two players that are redundant and making them play a position that they have issues playing, or they can be a liability playing. And now, in my opinion, when I look at the Buffalo Bills safety position, it's kind of like when you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks, right? When you have two safeties that are redundant, now it's like, okay, I think the Buffalo Bills, they have a liability at that safety position. Go get your ball hawking free safety, or try to get a guy that can play that free safety position, and then make Cole Bishop play that box safety and put Taylor Rapp as on the bench, or vice versa.
You know what Taylor Rapp is good at? Being the third safety.
Yes.
When he was brought in, he was signed late in the offseason, and he was the third safety, because the Bills do run three safeties. It happens. And he was really good in that spot at being the third safety. Now, I understand he wasn't gonna play over Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, but that's a good role for him. Like, find out wherever you want to stick him, so he's not just stuck, like you said, in the box. And then you even said, like, they're both box safeties. Do we even know what both of them are good at in this scheme? Do we know that that's what they're good at? Like,
they don't know. I don't think they know. That's why they're playing back and forth. They playing back and forth. And I think ultimately playing multiple positions for both of them is hurting both of them.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But I don't think that Sean McDermott sees it that way. I think that Sean McDermott is, and I'm not going to say stubborn is an excuse, but I feel like he wants to make it work, because those are the guys that he probably told Brandon Beane that he wanted. Now, I understand Brandon Beane signs the checks. I get that. And he makes those scouting decisions. But you don't think during those top 30 visits with Cole Bishop, or going to whatever scouting combines or whatever it is, they reported back the information to McDermott, and he watched the film and he was doing this and said, that's the guy that I want. And then same with Taylor Rapp. I don't know. Again, I'm not a film nerd. I watch enough to understand what's going on, but I don't know what they've watched in the last season last year, in 6 games this year, to say that that's good enough for his defense. Jordan Poyer played better in I don't know what he played, a quarter and a half of the game, played better than either of those two safeties. And that man hasn't taken a snap since last season. And he was on vacation when they signed him. He wasn't even in football shape. That tells you. Now, I understand he knows the system and he knows how McDermott wants him to play and where to be and stuff like that. But I don't know. Like, Jabril Peppers was there. Like, and I'm sure they could have moved some money around. There's some levers that Beane can pull on contracts that could have made it work. I'm 100% certain that Beane could have made Jabril Peppers work. And he would have been fine. So, but they didn't do that. There's been other safeties that are out there that they didn't do anything with. Why wouldn't you bring in, when Maxwell Hairston went down, you looked at Tre'Davious White and said, we're fine. We're going to go with our first round draft pick on IR with Tre'Davious White, who looked god-awful last season. Instead of looking at a guy like Stephon Gilmore, who played 15 games for the Vikings last year, played pretty good, and said, come on in, let's see what you got. Because is it worse than Tre'Davious White? Probably not. I don't know. I'm getting off on a tangent.
I know, and appreciate everybody for tuning in. Billsology, DM3, Dave Myers, 𝐸𝐻𝐵𝐾. I want to ask you another question, and then I want to go back to the offense. I want to talk about James Cook a little bit before we get out of here and his usage. But I want
to talk about the coaches in the AFC too before we get out of here.
Absolutely. But I want to ask you this question before we move on. Press conference earlier this week, Sean McDermott, they asked him, he was like, hey, what's up with the play calling? Have you thought about taking over play calling duties? And he just, he seemed adamant at it as well, right? He's not even thinking about taking over play calling duties. Now, me personally, I'm not no coach, right? We're not professional coaches, but certain things in my opinion, I just had that certain vibe, right? I knew when my brother was getting married, I knew he was going to get a divorce. like I just knew it was just a vibe. And now, but now with Bobby Babish, I don't have to, me personally, and I've been saying this for some time, I have nothing else to see from Bobby Babish. He should be relieved from his duties. What more must we see in order for Sean McDermott to say, hey, you know what? I got to take over. Do we have to lose 4 more games? Do we have to be 8th place in the AFC for you to finally be proactive and make a move? Or is it me just tripping? Do you have your vote of confidence in Bobby Babish? What's your thought on the coaching, play calling aspect of the defense for the Buffalo Bills?
To me, it's really simple. And we've touched on this before. You look at 2023, how aggressive the Bills were. Who called plays? McDermott. You look at how things fell off last year, and I think some people gave him a pass because it was his first year. I said this on another podcast this week. I think it was with Lance on Triple Coverage podcast. McDermott's going to be calling games at some point this year. I have a 100% confidence level in saying that.
He has to.
And I don't know what it would take, because I think Babish is getting a pass because of all these new coaches that they brought in on the defensive side. And I said yesterday that the defense looks disjointed, and it looks like it's a lot of communication problems. If you look at the Bills pre-snap, it looks like nobody knows where to line up. Now, yes, that's Bobby Babish. Like in practice, that should be practice. Like what's the offense looking like? And then you're supposed to react and respond. But to me, I don't know if they need to come together collectively on the defensive side of the ball, including Sean McDermott, and be like, why is there such communication issues? What's going on? And now I understand Matt Milano's out. He's the mic, right? He's not the mic, but he's a guy who's going to be, he knows where to put everybody, right? Like Terrell Bernard, he's going to know where to put everybody. Terrell Bernard went out. The defense looked chaotic. The safeties, you don't have Poyer and Hyde back there that are like putting people in spots to be successful. I'm over the Bobby Babish experiment. I understand he's been here for 9 years. He's come through every position on defense. Now he's got the defense. But I'm going to throw something out at you. And I guess to answer your question, I think McDermott will call plays, but I'm going to throw something out at you here. I think if the ship doesn't get righted here, and I'm not saying it's not going to, I'm not trying to say that the Bills won't turn things around, but if it doesn't, I feel like Joe Brady's going to be the scapegoat. I honestly feel like Joe Brady would be the guy that they're going to say, you know what?
Over Babish?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa.
Because Sean McDermott is loyal to a fault.
That's an interesting one.
Because then he will have to admit that he was wrong by promoting Bobby Babish. And a guy that he's mentored for 9 years. He's going to have to admit that he was wrong. Even though we see the regression the last 2 years, we see that all these draft picks and free agents and all this stuff have been like put on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen all of it and nothing's changed. The Bills still can't stop the run. The Bills still can't tackle, and the Bills still can't cover anybody. And before somebody comes at me talking about the injuries, I don't care. Every team has injuries. These guys just look like they're in bad position all the time. All the time.
And it's one thing where the Buffalo Bills couldn't stop the run because, since Sean McDermott tenure for the Buffalo Bills. That's been an issue, right? But at the same time, we've seen other things. Like when I seen Sean McDermott call plays, I seen some resistance. I seen an aggressive style of defense. Even though we give up points, we do it aggressively and fast. You know, with this one, it's just like it's too many offensive players are running wide open. Too many offensive players are running with a lack of resistance. Too many offensive players are running 4, 5, 6 yards from the line of scrimmage without being touched. And that is what I have an issue with. That is the part of where it's like, okay, now it's like, this is a coaching thing. Not only the players, but it's the coaching. Is the coaching is an issue as well, and that's what I have a problem with. And I don't want to hear, oh, players. I understand players. 2017 Buffalo Bills, when Leslie Frazier was calling plays, they didn't have the greatest players on defense.
No,
but those players played better than they actually did, than they actually were as individuals, because the structure of that defense made sense. The structure was intact. Now, I don't think the structure, the foundation of the defense for this Buffalo Bills under Bobby Babish is broken. And that's a problem that I have. And that's why, in my opinion, I don't even need to see anymore. Sean McDermott, knowing him, we're going to have to lose another game or two for him to make that change. But I don't have to see any more from Bobby Babish.
I think we need to start getting ready for next year, not because the season's over, I'm not going to win and do all that, but I feel like Brady's gone next year regardless. We're talking about coordinators. I feel like he's gone regardless, because the Penn State job that's his dream job. Like, he's going to get if you look at the betting odds, he's the favorite, the hands down favorite to get the Penn State job. So either two things happen: the Bills don't make a run this year, whatever, and he's relieved of his duties, or the Bills are really successful and he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago. What does this offensive roster look like with all Joe Brady wide receivers and all Joe Brady skill position guys? What does this offense look like for the next few years with a new offensive coordinator? I don't want to get into that right now in depth. That's another conversation for another day. But I hope that this offense just gets back to just basic shit. Just do basic shit. And defensively, like, if you watch Drake London, who's the only receiver on the Falcons, just running wide open.
Ass open.
Like, I understand Bijan Robinson. Okay, we haven't stopped anybody in the run all year. Bijan Robinson was going to get his. Like, cool. Drake London was running wide ass open, except when he was covered by Christian Benford, and then they took Christian Benford off of him and put Jamarcus Ingram on him, a practice squad guy. How does that make any sense? How does McDermott see that and say, what? They're only really good wide receivers being covered by our practice squad guy. Maybe we should put the guy we just gave a boatload of money to on him, improve his worth. I digress. So let's talk about, and I saw this floating around on X this week, and it was just a question. There was no answers. I'm not going to reveal how people answered things like that.
Right.
I'm going to preface it by saying, since Belichick left, Sean McDermott has hands down been the best head coach in the AFC East. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Robert Saleh was a train wreck. Adam Gase was there before. This year, Aaron Glenn's not doing well. And then obviously Mike McDaniel in Miami. New England's gone through a bunch of head coaches. Let me ask you this. It's 2025. Is Sean McDermott right now currently the best head coach in the AFC East? It's not a trick question. I just want your honest opinion.
Right now, today, I would say yes, he's the best head coach in the AFC East. But you got to look out for Mike Vrabel. He's catching up.
I think Mike Vrabel is the best head coach in the AFC East. I think that when we saw that hire in the offseason, collectively, Bills fans were like, shit. Because say what you want about how he left Tennessee. I feel like that organization is just kind of a dumpster fire the last 4 or 5 years. He's a good head coach. He's a culture guy.
He's a damn good head coach.
He's a player's coach. He's in-game management, I think, hands down, is better than Sean McDermott. I feel like those very intricate situations in games he seems to make the right decision more times than not. The knowledge of the rule book and just things that I don't know. I just feel like his players are going to outperform, like 2017 Sean McDermott's players are going to outperform who we think they are. And that's why I'm concerned about the 2025 New England Patriots. Not because they just beat us by 4 points, because I feel like they have a coach and structure and culture similar to what the Bills had a few years back that started. They have a quarterback. Drake May scares the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie. Drake May scares the shit out of me. They have money. They can go make a whole bunch of moves in free agency or at the trade deadline. They can go get a Chris Olave or a Jacoby Myers or somebody else of that stature. So I'm concerned. I'm now there's 12 weeks left in the season. So there's a long ways to go this year.
Absolutely.
So what were you saying?
So, and I get it, right? And when you speak solely on the stuff that you've spoken about, I can agree that Mike Vrabel is possibly the best head coach in the AFC East. But the reason why I still give that to Sean McDermott is just because, obviously, of his history. Winning the AFC East, we spoke about his record last week. But then I have to think about, it's, in my opinion, I could be thinking a little deep. It's a combination, right? When we think about coaching, a coaching staff, head coach, it's head coach and it's GM, right? It's up to the GM to hit on the necessary players to fit the scheme of the coach. And I think what New England is doing thus far, their GM is in sync with their coach as to a tune of the players that they're getting. They're performing, right? Stephon Diggs, they hit on Drake May. That wasn't two of them, good for them, but they Stephon Diggs, and they have a good defense, and that defense they have a good foundation over there. It seems as if the Christian Gonzalez is a lockdown corner. It's about the decisions that the front office made, and now they have to make those decisions look good based on the coaching. And I think Brandon Beane is not helping Sean McDermott with the players that he's acquiring for Sean McDermott to coach. And when the players are not talented enough, I think that it's a trickle-down effect. If your players aren't talented enough, it's going to affect the coaching and vice versa. And I think being that the New England Patriots, they have Vrabel, they have the new GM, they have money, and being that they have money, they can go ahead and get those high impact guys because they can afford them. And I think that equates to a better product on the football field right now. So yes, do I think that Mike Vrabel is a good head coach, but I think the foundation starts with what the GM is giving him to coach on the football field. And I think right now they have an advantage in that retrospect, as opposed to what the Buffalo Bills are going through with the lack of money and the lack of cap flexibility and the players that they're going after because of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then I'm going to give you one more nugget to think on too. Josh McDaniels is going to be the offensive coordinator for Drake May as long as he wants to be. He's the head coaching experiments for Josh McDaniels is not
over. He is the offensive version of Spags in Kansas City, basically.
Exactly. And Joe Brady's going to be gone eventually, probably after the season. I think most definitely after the season, one way or the other. So that's another feather in the cap for Mike Vrabel for, keeping him on board, having him be with his quarterback for the next how many ever years they want. All right, before we go, one more thing I want to touch on. A couple bright spots. Is there some bright spots? It's not all doom and gloom. Some bright spots on the Bills roster that you feel like you would want to talk about. Some names to throw out there. If you want to do a couple, I can do a couple, and then we can kind of get out of here after that. Obviously, large human.
Yeah, Deion Walker.
Deion
Walker's is. He's playing good ball, man. He's 6'6", but his athletic traits suggest that, he possibly should be doing this. Now, is he doing this a lot sooner than what we expected? Possibly, yes. But he's 6'6".
He's had to, though.
Right. 6'6", 340 pounds. He's light on his feet. He's athletically gifted. He has a lot of gifted traits that is now starting to show on the football field. And I think, he's one of the best players, if not the best players, not only as a rookie, but probably on that defense period right now.
Yeah.
He's probably the best player on that defense period right now. And that has a lot to do with, his athletic gifts and his athletic traits. So that's the one guy, that I can mention that is playing well. What you got? I may have another one.
Well, another nugget on Dean Walker is I like that he's playing so much because you'll see he makes mistakes, but I feel like he makes up for it at times in the game as well. So he needs to make those mistakes so he can learn and grow as a young rookie, because we always complain about the rookies never get the playing time and they're got to be ready for the postseason. And Sean McDermott doesn't play rookies and all that stuff. He's getting the warts out of the way now. Like, make the mistakes now so that when we need you to make plays, you'll make plays. Dalton Kincaid. Like,
that was my next one.
Yes,
that was him. Yep.
Yes, he missed last game, but I feel like all the fans wanted to just think about the last thing they saw from Dalton Kincaid all offseason was that drop against the Chiefs, and how it seemed like him and Josh weren't on the same page for most of the season. So it seems like some of that's gone away. I am a little concerned that he's dinged up again. Hopefully this isn't something where he misses a consistent amount of time and it's something he can come back from right away, because it looked like everything that they were trying to incorporate him into was working. He has 3 touchdowns already, 20 plus receptions, if I'm not mistaken. And it just looks like it's working. So what's your thoughts?
I like it. I like it a lot. That was my offensive player, Dalton Kincaid. He seems as if in his 3rd year, he's starting to get it. Josh Allen seems more comfortable getting him the ball. And in my opinion, right now, we have to probably start looking at him as the go-to target for the Buffalo Bills on offense. I think he is the best offensive weapon, not named James Cook, on the Buffalo Bills offense right now. And we have to utilize him. We have to utilize him as a mismatch nightmare.
Yeah, I was going to say James Cook, but it's obvious about how he's performing. And then one last one I got. What about Shaq Thompson? He's been the Bills' best linebacker through 6 weeks, and I know he's had abbreviated snaps, but here recently he's been playing very well. I think that when he was on the field when Bernard went out, it looked like I don't want to say it was the old Shaq Thompson, but I feel like he fit in really well. And he's kind of a McDermott guy, I feel like. And I feel like if McDermott needs a spark, I feel like he might be that guy. I just don't want to rely on that too much, because I know he does have an injury history, and with more snaps, more reps, more, physicality on your body and things like that. So, but we'll see. I like what I've seen from Shaq Thompson. Anything else? Any other players from you?
Nah, I think we got the main 3. We got the main 3: Deion Walker, Shaq Thompson, and Dalton Kincaid.
All right, that's all I got. I think that's going to do it for this show. This was a good show. It was a lot of just open dialogue.
Yep.
I know that Akeem and myself, we like to sometimes have structure, but then sometimes we like to just talk, like two guys talking about football. And I feel like that's when we have our best conversations. So we'll be back next week. We'll have a game to talk about next week. We'll have previews and predictions for the Bills versus the Carolina Panthers. Hey, Rich, anything else? And then you want to take us out of here?
Nah, nothing else. This has been a great show. Appreciate everybody for tuning in to Billsology on the Built in Buffalo Network. My name is Akeem Richens. That over there, handsome guy, is Dave Myers, DM3. Please tune in next week. Billsology again. Dave Myers talked about it. We're going to give our scores, some stats, some predictions, possibly more structure and layers for next week's show. This week we just feel like it was a bye week. Let's just shoot the shits and just talk about what we needed to talk about in terms of getting things out with our frustrations with our Buffalo Bills. We love our team. We want to see our team hopefully hoist that Lombardi trophy sooner rather than later. And we hope that the team can rectify their situations coming out of the bye week. So once again, Billsology, Akeem Richens, that is Dave Myers. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Let them people know it's time for the show.